When I bought the land in Pinewood Valley, I never anticipated the chaos that would unfold. The valley had always been special to me, a sprawling stretch of untouched nature with rolling green hills, towering pine trees, and a peaceful stream that cut through the landscape like a ribbon of silver. My family had vacationed here when I was a child, and the opportunity to purchase the entire valley was a dream come true. What I didn't realize at the time was that nestled at one end of the valley was a small, highly organized, and notoriously difficult homeowners association called Pinewood Heights HOA. They had recently expanded into a tiny corner of the valley, erecting a handful of luxury cabins that attracted affluent buyers who wanted a slice of mountain life without sacrificing their suburban sensibilities. The HOA was led by none other than Karen Whitlock, a woman who practically defined the term HOA tyrant. Her reputation for enforcing the strictest rules and issuing fines for the smallest infractions was legendary. From the moment she learned that someone new had purchased the valley, she decided that she would extend her authority across every inch of my property, even though her jurisdiction was legally limited to the few lots within Pinewood Heights itself. The trouble started when I decided to build a small, rustic cabin deep in the valley, far away from the HOA's cluster of cabins. I had no interest in bothering them, and I certainly had no intention of joining their association. My cabin was modest, a single-story log home with a wraparound porch, a stone chimney, and large windows to take in the breathtaking views. But as soon as the construction vehicles rolled onto my property, Karen appeared like a vulture, clipboard in hand, snapping photos and jotting down notes. "Excuse me," she called out in her shrill voice. "Do you have a permit for this construction? Are you aware that this violates HOA guidelines?" I looked up from where I was overseeing the crew. "Ma'am, this is private property. I'm not part of your HOA." Her eyes narrowed. "All properties within Pinewood Valley fall under our jurisdiction. You need to cease construction immediately until we review your building plans." I shook my head, trying to remain calm. "I own every acre of Pinewood Valley, except for the small section where your HOA cabins sit. You have no authority here." Karen's face turned red. "We'll see about that," she snapped before storming off. Over the next few weeks, Karen escalated her harassment. She mailed me letters filled with fabricated violations, called county inspectors to my property, and even attempted to block the private road leading to my cabin. Every time she failed, her frustration grew. She couldn't stand the fact that someone in her valley was outside her control. Then came the day that changed everything. I had just finished furnishing the cabin and was sitting on the porch enjoying a morning coffee when I heard the sound of sirens. 3 sheriff's vehicles pulled up, lights flashing. Karen followed behind them in her luxury SUV, looking smug. "Officers," she began as they stepped out of their vehicles, "this man is trespassing and illegally constructing on HOA property. I demand you arrest him and shut down this illegal cabin." The lead deputy, Sheriff Daniels, approached me. "Sir, can I see your ID and proof of ownership?" I handed over the deed and property records I always kept in a folder for situations exactly like this. Daniels studied the documents carefully, his brow furrowing. "Ma'am," he finally said, turning to Karen, "this property isn't under the jurisdiction of Pinewood Heights HOA. In fact, Mr. Walker here owns every acre of this valley except for your subdivision. He's well within his rights to build here." Karen's jaw dropped. "That can't be. There must be some mistake." "No mistake," Daniel said firmly. "You're trespassing, Mrs. Whitlock. I suggest you leave before we charge you with harassment." Humiliated but defiant, Karen retreated to her SUV and sped off. But that wasn't the end. If anything, it was only the beginning of her vendetta against me. The following weeks were a constant battle. Karen filed frivolous lawsuits, challenged my property lines, and even launched a public smear campaign accusing me of damaging the environment. She claimed that my cabin disrupted local wildlife, endangered protected species, and polluted the stream. Each claim was more absurd than the last, and each time I countered with solid evidence and expert testimony that debunked her accusations. What Karen didn't anticipate was how much I had prepared before purchasing the property. I had hired the best environmental consultants to ensure my cabin would have minimal impact. I consulted water rights attorneys and surveyed every inch of my land. My documentation was ironclad, and every attempt she made to discredit me only strengthened my legal standing. Soon, Karen's antics began to wear thin with the community. Many Pinewood Heights residents grew tired of her obsessive crusade, especially as their HOA fees increased to cover legal expenses. A few even approached me privately to apologize for her behavior and express their support, but Karen still had one more card to play. She petitioned the county board to annex my land into the HOA's jurisdiction. It was a desperate move, but one that forced me to take the fight public. At the county hearing, both sides presented their arguments. Karen painted me as a reckless outsider destroying the valley's natural beauty, while I presented detailed reports, legal documents, and testimony from environmental experts who praised my responsible stewardship. When the county board voted unanimously in my favor, Karen's face turned ghostly white. Her attempt to seize control had failed spectacularly. After the hearing, I hoped Karen would finally back down, but instead, she became more unhinged. She hired private security to patrol the boundary of Pinewood Heights, installed surveillance cameras aimed at my property, and even trespassed late at night to photograph my cabin from a distance. I installed my own security systems and filed multiple restraining orders, but Karen's obsession only deepened. One evening, while reviewing footage from one of my trail cameras, I caught Karen sneaking onto my property again. This time, I had enough. I called Sheriff Daniels, who personally came out to arrest her for criminal trespass. The news of her arrest spread quickly, and the HOA board finally had no choice but to remove her from her position. With Karen out of power, peace slowly returned to Pinewood Valley. The new HOA leadership reached out to me, expressing a desire to coexist amicably. They even invited me to attend community events, which I occasionally did to build goodwill. Over time, my cabin became a retreat not just for me, but for friends, family, and even some of the residents who once supported Karen. We held barbecues, hosted fishing tournaments in the stream, and enjoyed the natural beauty that first drew me to the valley. As the years passed, Pinewood Valley flourished. My cabin expanded into a small lodge, offering guests a chance to experience the tranquility of the mountains. The HOA, under its new leadership, focused on community improvements rather than petty enforcement. And Karen? She eventually moved away, her reputation forever tarnished. I never set out to make an enemy, but when Karen challenged my right to enjoy my own land, I had no choice but to stand my ground. In the end, the valley remained mine, not just in ownership, but in spirit. And every morning as I sipped my coffee on the porch, I was reminded that some battles are worth fighting, especially when they protect the legacy of a place you love. The months following Karen's departure brought a breath of peace and tranquility to Pinewood Valley. Yet beneath that calm, the echoes of her toxic reign still lingered. I continued to expand the lodge, ensuring every detail remained respectful of the valley's natural beauty. Guests from across the state came to experience the serenity Pinewood offered, and many local residents, once wary of me, found themselves drawn into the peaceful rhythm of the land. The community dinners I hosted on the lodge's wide wraparound porch became a cherished tradition, where laughter and storytelling carried into the cool mountain nights, creating a fellowship that transcended past divisions. However, the quiet didn't mean the challenges had ended completely. The new HOA leadership, though far more reasonable, had inherited a financial mess left behind by Karen's obsessive legal crusades. Many residents, weary of rising dues and mounting debts, began pushing for more transparency and reforms, which I supported wholeheartedly, offering my assistance where possible to help rebuild trust and stability. James, my steadfast friend and legal counsel, remained deeply involved. We conducted workshops educating property owners about their rights, and slowly but surely, the community transformed from a fractured battleground into a cooperative, thriving enclave. Yet even as progress was made, whispers occasionally circulated that Karen had not entirely given up her obsession. Rumors surfaced that she was quietly attempting to acquire a small parcel of adjacent land bordering the valley's western ridge, a rocky, less accessible area that could, if manipulated correctly, offer her a strategic foothold to stir trouble once again. Determined not to be blindsided, I began my own quiet investigation. With James's assistance, we uncovered that Karen had indeed partnered with an out-of-state developer who was unfamiliar with the local dynamics but enticed by the prospect of lucrative vacation rentals. They were attempting to purchase multiple small plots from absentee landowners, hoping to piece together enough acreage to bypass the HOA entirely and create a separate enclave under their own set of rules. The potential for conflict was obvious. If left unchecked, Karen's new venture could not only threaten the fragile peace we had built, but also endanger the environmental balance of the valley we had worked so hard to preserve. Rather than react impulsively, I decided to approach the situation with the same meticulous preparation that had won the first battle. I expanded my legal team, brought in environmental experts, and began quietly purchasing available parcels that bordered my property. As the pieces fell into place, my ownership formed an unbreakable buffer, effectively boxing out Karen's developing scheme. Each acquisition was conducted legally, ethically, and transparently, leaving no opening for future disputes. Despite these efforts, Karen's ambition remained unquenched. She began launching public relations attacks through local media, accusing me of monopolizing land, destroying affordable housing opportunities, and acting as a land baron hoarding natural resources for personal gain. Her narrative, though baseless, found some sympathetic ears among distant activists unfamiliar with the truth. The media circus grew when an investigative reporter, hungry for controversy, decided to do a feature story. They interviewed Karen extensively, allowing her to spin wild tales of my so-called empire building. But rather than panic, I saw an opportunity. James arranged for a full tour of Pinewood Valley with the reporter, allowing them to witness firsthand the careful balance of conservation and development we had fostered. The lush forests, thriving wildlife, crystal-clear streams, and community programs spoke volumes more than Karen's hollow accusations ever could. The reporter's final article, far from condemning me, became a glowing testament to responsible land stewardship, further isolating Karen and her dwindling allies. Still, Karen's schemes didn't end there. In a final desperate move, she filed a lawsuit alleging that the original land titles had been improperly transferred decades ago and that my ownership was invalid. This tactic was her most aggressive yet and carried the potential to drag out a bitter court battle for years if allowed to gain traction. But Karen had underestimated both my preparation and my patience. My legal team unearthed extensive historical records, including original deeds, surveyor notes, and county filings, dating back over a century. We even brought in historians and land use experts who testified to the legitimacy of every transaction. The court hearings attracted considerable attention, with spectators filling the small county courthouse. Karen's legal team, clearly outmatched, struggled to present any credible evidence. The judge, a no-nonsense veteran with little patience for frivolous arguments, quickly grew frustrated with their lack of substance. After weeks of testimony, the ruling was swift and decisive. Every aspect of my ownership was validated, and Karen's lawsuit was dismissed with prejudice. Additionally, the court sanctioned her for abusing the legal process, ordering her to pay a substantial portion of my legal fees. Humiliated yet again, Karen's influence finally crumbled completely. Her out-of-state partner severed ties, cutting his losses, and the remaining parcels she had hoped to acquire were instead sold to conservation trusts that shared my vision for the valley. With her final defeat, Karen left Pinewood County altogether, moving to a distant city where her name carried no weight and her reputation was stained beyond repair. For Pinewood Valley, this marked the true beginning of lasting peace. The HOA, free from Karen's toxicity, flourished under new leadership dedicated to community enrichment and collaboration. We organized joint projects, planting community gardens, improving hiking trails, and hosting seasonal festivals that attracted visitors and strengthened bonds among residents. The lodge continued to thrive, becoming a beloved gathering spot not only for tourists, but also for local events, educational workshops, and charity fundraisers. Grandpa, who had quietly supported me through every conflict, spent his days teaching kids how to fish, sharing stories around the campfire, and reminding us all of the simple joys Pinewood Valley offered. He often said that standing up to Karen wasn't just about protecting land, it was about defending a way of life worth preserving. The years passed. My investment of time, energy, and resources paid dividends far beyond financial return. The valley remained a sanctuary of harmony, where nature and community coexisted in balance. I established a conservation easement ensuring the land could never be exploited or overdeveloped, safeguarding its beauty for future generations. On quiet evenings, as I stood on the lodge's deck watching the sunset paint the sky in brilliant hues, I reflected on the incredible journey that had brought us here. From a determined woman trying to assert illegitimate power, to the solidarity of a community choosing cooperation over conflict, Pinewood Valley had endured and flourished. One spring morning, as the valley burst into full bloom, a group of school children visited for an environmental education field trip. Their wide eyes and endless questions reminded me why we fought so hard to protect this place. As they wandered the nature trails, observed nesting birds, and learned about the ecosystem, I knew the legacy of Pinewood Valley was secure. In their excitement and awe, I saw the future, a generation that would inherit not only the land but the hard-won wisdom of standing firm in the face of injustice and the importance of preserving the natural world entrusted to our care. Karen's name faded into history, a footnote of failed tyranny, while Pinewood Valley blossomed as a shining example of resilience, integrity, and community. And as long as I drew breath, I vowed to honor that legacy, ensuring the valley remained a sanctuary for all who sought its peace.